Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. Depending on when you're listening to this, the UK could still be part of the EU or it may not be. It's getting quite boring now, to be perfectly honest, with all the stuff going on. I'll be glad when it's over. Anyway, I've got two guests this week. The first one is a continuation from last week. It's Frank Brehany from Holiday Travel Watch. I couldn't fit everything he spoke about onto last week's show, so I'm finishing off this week with a little bit continuing about the suntan lotions, which I've been talking about quite a lot recently, and also the taking your children out of school, what he feels about the recent ruling. And that's going to be followed by, sorry, I've got a sore throat, I'm sorry about my voice, Austin Vince, and I'm speaking to Austin about the Adventure Travel Film Festival. This is something I found in The Independent last year. I thought that looks really interesting, but unfortunately it was too late for me to do anything about it. And I made a note and I made contact and they were more than happy to come on the show, which was nice. He's a great guy. Had a good time. I did manage to ask a question which reminded me of the question I asked the Romanian about the vampires in Transylvania. So I've now got two radio presenter rules. Don't talk about vampires to Romanians. And two, don't ask camera people what sort of camera equipment they should buy. I'm never going to do either of those again. So anyway, Austin's coming up later. But now back to Frank. As I said, couldn't fit everything in. So if you didn't listen to last week's show, please do. There's a lot of interesting information. He's very good, very knowledgeable on the consumer rights for the traveller. And he's hoping that we're going to stay in the EU anyway. So the first one we're going to talk about is about suntan lotion and whether travel companies and accommodation providers should do more to provide cover for those who are out in the sun. I mean, after all, they sell pictures of the beach and the pool, but only once in my travelling life have I ever come across somewhere where there's been plentiful a number of sun umbrellas. And that's in the Cayman Islands, and I had 4, believe it or not, put exactly where I wanted to. I'm not a fan of the sun, but I thought that was great. But normally you have to get up at 6 o'clock, get your towel out, and you've got it. But there's never enough to go around. So I asked Frank what he felt, if he felt that their travel companies should do more.
It's a very good point. I mean, one of our top search pages is about sunstroke and cancers. And I think the short answer to your question is yes. I think they should. But I suspect the underlying thought is this, that holidaymakers are with hotels or tour operators, traveling with tour operators for a very short period of time. So any holidaymaker who, for example, doesn't follow the sensible advices of creaming up properly and covering up, for a good portion of the day, and then tries to make a claim, for example, of ill health stemming from that exposure, I think would have a real problem, because they would just simply say, well, this is so remote. How can you say that 1 week holiday or that 2 week holiday has created this particular cancer? It would, if you like, it's the connection, it's the causation, if you like. It is, a travel company or a hotelier who has their customer at the center of their operations should actually, morally, if nothing else, actually provide this kind of cover. And I think there is also an important point to bear in mind here as well. With the climatic changes that we hear about a lot in the news, there is talk about the increased levels of radiation that's escaping into our atmosphere. And, travel companies and hoteliers should be thinking of that. But, I'm going to flip the other side of the coin. Mm-hmm. So too should consumers. Yep. There are plenty of dermatologists out there who are very clear about this. For goodness sake, don't slap on the suntan lotion once and assume because it says it's waterproof that you don't have to do it for the rest of the day. make sure you use a high factor. Make sure that you cover it. Wear a hat. Keep your face covered. Don't lay out in the sun all day. Sit under that shade, which is the point that you're validly making. But it's almost in a sense a case of physician heal thyself. But at the same time, I think that caring travel companies and hoteliers would also recognise this as well, and because they, in some respects, the hoteliers in particular should be kind of promoting this kind of safe sun practice. And if you think about it, it's a good marketing kind of ploy. Look, hotel guests, we want you to enjoy your holiday, but when you're out in the sun, you're not used to this kind of sunshine here. There are plenty of spaces here for shade, and you should use them and think about your sun creams and everything else. Consumers are going to think, actually, this hotel or this complex or this company or this family who run this hotel are actually okay. They're looking out for me. That's a good selling point. And I just wish that hoteliers would recognise that.
Customer-focused holidays. Now, there's a novelty.
Well, yes, another theme there. A customer focus. There's plenty of talk out there about customer focus, but I have to say, looking at the calls to my helpline, there is very little, and indeed what I see on Twitter, there's very little actual customer focus. I think it's a case of tick box customer focus, and I think we really need to get back to basics on this.
Just returning to Europe for a slight moment, I had an American cancer expert on my last show, and we're talking about whether suntan lotions are a health risk, and apparently the regulations in the EU are much stronger than the ones in America, so the American lotions, according to some experts, are actually unhealthy, whereas the ones in Europe are better, so it's another tick box for Europe, I think. Not that I want to persuade anybody to vote either way, but yeah, you've got to think about this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you are right. I work, and I'm not scoring points here, believe me, but I work on an international committee in the United States on cabin air quality, and I get to talk about other aspects of products that we get to talk about, which are connected sometimes or not connected with the cabin air quality issue. And the one thing that really stands out when I talk to my American friends is that they are actually quite jealous of the high standards in products that we enjoy here in the European Union, because they feel, whatever the product is, that their standards or their laws should actually be seeking to emulate what we enjoy here in the European Union, and not the other way around. It is. I'm not surprised to hear you speak about the sun lotion product or the levels of the products, because it is quite right. We do have quite a few standards, quite a few regulations that govern these things here in the European Union. But it's good for us, and it's also good for the industry that sells these products. It creates the level playing field of the single market.
You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. Still to come, there's Austin Vince, who's going to be talking about the Adventure Travel Film Festival. Very interesting person. It's well worth staying on to hear what he has to say. I really enjoyed my chat with him. He's so upbeat, and maybe go down the pub with him one day and have a few jars to hear all his stories, because he sounds like he's got loads of them to talk about. But anyway, Austin's coming up later. But I'm coming to the end of my chat with Frank Brehany. As I said at the beginning, he was on last week's show. If you go to facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show, you'll see a link for the 16th of June show. You can click on that and you can get the podcast to hear what we talked about when it came to the EU and European consumer rights. This last section is basically around taking your child out of school during term time. I'm sure you know about the recent court case where the Isle of Wight Council took a father to court over a fine he appealed for taking his daughter out of school during term time. And I was keen to know what Frank thought about this, even if he had any solutions to the peak of holiday prices going up during school holiday time, which I know upsets an awful lot of people. People with parents, parents with children even, and people who are not parents, because sometimes you need to go in July because it's the best time to go where you want to go. So it's just not just parents who are having to find the extra cash, it's childless couples too. But anyway, this is what Frank had to say on the subject.
Well, frankly, I think the whole law was ill-conceived. It's the second time I've used that phrase about our current Westminster government. Mm-hmm. It was an ill-conceived law, which has had huge consequences. There is much in the media about this particular case, and I will make the distinction between John Platt's case. I think he was right to challenge it. Mm-hmm. His daughter had an excellent attendance record and also achievement record as well. And he challenged it on a particular point of law. But the calls to our helpline are from people who are shift workers or with difficult leave patterns. They could be military, they could be essential service personnel, and they're often faced with little or no choice. Much is said about taking, that families, the center of our lives is family life, yet if employment dictates that they have to take leave at a particular time and the poison chalice of discretion has been passed to head teachers who are also under pressure from other target-driven issues from central government, it will bring that cohort and head teachers into conflict. We had a situation prior to 2013, before this current law was introduced, whereby the system operated really well. And the edifice of education didn't collapse. It's a no-brainer to say that everyone wants a high standard of education. And quite frankly, I think the majority of parents would agree with that and are not about to start booking wholesale their holidays, out of term time. I just don't see that at all. And I have seen some wild claims by some travel companies over the Euro